Hi, I'm Dan Penegger with Project Counsel Media here in Washington, D.C., just outside of the Georgetown Law School's first year of the Cybersecurity Law Institute that they're holding. And with me today is Benjamin Powell. Benjamin, you're a partner at Wilmer Hale. Thanks for taking some time to talk with us today.
Happy to be here.
So cybersecurity, it sounds like one of those things that every time I open the newspaper or turn on the TV, I hear about an attack or a theft of data. You know, Sony was hacked and their PlayStation systems went down for a long period of time. ATMs are hacked and people get ripped off of $40 million. Is cybersecurity something that, you know, big corporations are dealing with on a day-to-day basis? Are they concerned about cybersecurity attacks? And quite frankly, are small companies now facing these attacks?
In a recent survey of board of directors, they rated cybersecurity as the #1 issue that they are concerned about on their agenda. So you see both board of directors at large corporations and small corporations being increasingly concerned about cybersecurity and frankly being at the top of their agenda in terms of protecting both their intellectual property and their customers' data. And rightfully so, given the increasing threat that is out there to their systems and frankly to their crown jewels and intellectual property of their company. So they're rightfully concerned in placing it at the top of their agenda.
Some estimates have said that the theft of intellectual property tops $1 trillion in a given year or to date. And the question is, what can a company do? What can a board of directors, their chief information security officers do to limit that risk?
Yeah. So it clearly is a large cost to these cybersecurity incidents and the loss of intellectual property. There are a number of things that they can do. All hope is not lost. Really, I think people would say about 80% of the incidents relate to one of 20 different controls that corporations need to have in place to ensure that they are securing their networks, their systems, and their data. So there are very much, the development of best practices, I think, has been a very good development in the security industry. I think boards of directors and chief executives and other members of the C-suite should familiarize themselves and want to do their diligence to make sure that their company is complying with best practices in security, to make sure that they've got the basics down and implemented at their company to really protect a large majority of the attacks that could happen.
And of course, you're referring to the SANS 20 security controls that are out there and published. So the question comes, you get a call from the general counsel at a major corporation. We've been attacked. We think we know the cause. Do we have to report this to law enforcement? What's your answer?
Yeah. So I was referring to the SANS 20 controls, and even with those controls, you still are going to have incidents happen given the complexity of the IT systems, the upgrades and other things that are going to change your configurations of your systems that may end up creating vulnerabilities. When we get those calls in terms of we believe we've had an incident, what should we do in terms of next steps? Really trying to figure out the incident based on frequently very partial facts is really our first step. Once we have an idea of what this looks like, we look at, depending on the incident, what their reporting obligations are at either the federal level or the state level, given that most of the states, of course, have data breach notification laws and their own obligations, plus looking at their contractual obligations to their customers. If it is the type of incident that is criminal activity, then it is something where you will want to, in many cases, have a liaison with the appropriate law enforcement authorities and notify them of the incident if it's something where the corporation may be interested in pursuing a criminal investigation and supporting that by the law enforcement authorities.
And of course, there's always the possibility that the government is coming to you as well, either FBI or Department of Homeland Security, and talking with corporate counsel or the CSIO or the CEO of a company. Have you had that happen?
Sure, absolutely. And you do, particularly in the critical infrastructure areas, perhaps from time to time, get notifications from the government or visits from the government where they've become aware of an incident where data from the company has been lost or there's an ongoing network intrusion from a malicious actor. I think companies in most cases are interested to see how can the government help and what is the information that the government may have that will allow you to do additional forensic investigation on your network. So, working with the government in those cases is something where they may be able to provide help to you, particularly in the areas that the government will be most concerned about related to critical infrastructure.
That's really interesting. So obviously at Wilmer Hale, you counsel a lot of very large clients on data privacy, security, cybersecurity. My question is, are they asking about these issues when they sign their engagement letters? Are they asking whether or not the firm has specific insurance coverage or reinsurance coverage to protect them if the law firm is hacked?
Mm-hmm. Increasingly, you're seeing clients inquire about the network security posture of law firms. In some cases, wanting to do audits to ensure that you're complying with best practices in the industry and you have reasonable procedures in place to protect their data. So you're seeing increasing interest and increasing requirements of law firms to ensure that they have the right security policies and procedures in place.
Do you think that a Fortune 100 or a top 100 law firm should be held to a higher level of security standard than, the small town, rural law firm in Florida, for instance?
Well, I think there's kind of a few pieces to that. First, of course, we all know that sometimes the weakest link on the network is the place of entry and vulnerability. So I don't look at it as necessarily, should the top 100 be held to different standards as a smaller law firm. I think it goes back to what is the data that they're handling, what is the type of access they're going to handle. You certainly could have smaller firms handling very sensitive discovery data and intellectual property of one of their clients. And I don't think you'd want relaxed standards on that data simply because it's not a larger law firm. So I think it really goes back to what is the type of work they're doing, what is the network access they're going to have, and what is the value of the data that they're going to hold, and what could be the impact on the corporation if that data is lost.
Absolutely fantastic advice, even for the small town firms. Nobody can let their networks go by the wayside. They still have to consider these issues, and it affects us all. Every single step of the chain has to consider this. So, what are some takeaways from the conference here this weekend?
So I think first, make sure that if you're in the legal business, that the basics are in place, that you have the right controls in place, and you're acting reasonably with the data. Clearly, these are developing standards and rules that will apply to the legal business. We're seeing much more interest on these issues from the client side because they themselves have had increasing interest within their business as a result of the changing and evolving nature of the cyber threat. So people need to remain alert to these issues and take reasonable steps to protect themselves.
Well, Ben, thanks very much for joining us. And for Project Counsel Media, I'm Dan Pinniger. Thanks for watching.